Okay, hello everyone. We are from Group 4. We'd like to present our presentation related to our task that is critical journal review about anchoring method. And the members of our group are Olga Simorangkir and me, Putri Melinda. Next slide, please. Okay, the first is introduction. Neuro-linguistic programming anchoring method in interview. Neuro-linguistic programming, or NLP, is a set of techniques and strategies used to improve communication, self-awareness, and personal development. In an interview setting, NLP methods can be used to improve a candidate's confidence, clarity, and overall performance. One common NLP technique used in interviews is called anchoring, which involves creating a positive emotional association with a particular word, phrase, or gesture. For example, a candidate may be asked to remember a time when they felt confident and successful, and then be asked to replicate that feeling during the interview by using a specific gesture or saying a particular word. Anchoring is a technique by which you associate a feeling or emotion with a physical act, press, or sensation. Once you create that association, whenever you need to reproduce those feeling or emotion, you perform the associated action. For example, you might associate repeating the words good job with a feeling of calm. You may anxious about a performance meeting with your boss. Before the meeting, repeat the words to yourself to immediately feel more relaxed. Another possible anchoring use is to lighten your mood if you are feeling sad or depressed. Next slide, please. And this is the table of contents of each part. The first is name of journals, and the second is volume, month, and year, and the third is the authors or university. The fourth is the background of research and why the author interested in the topic. And the fifth is about the problems of research. The sixth is about the methodology. The seven is about data and collecting data. The eight is about analyzing the data. The nine is about research, finding, and discussion. And the last is about conclusion. So I will explain about the first journal, and Olga will explain uh, the second journal. Next slide, please. Okay, the first journal. The name of the first journal is Reducing Assimilation and Contrast Effects on Selection Interview Ratings Using Behaviorally and Core Rating Scales. The volume is 1, the month is February, and the years is 2019. The authors are Dirk Loop and Anna Nietzsche, and the university are University of Gießen and University of Marburg. Next slide. The background of research, why the author interested in the topic. As an approach for reducing the impact of assimilation and contrast effects, the authors consider behaviorally incurred rating scales, Bars, Smith and Kendall, 1963. The authors conjecture that by providing raters with more informative rating materials, they will rely less on previous comparative performance assessments and more on the more objective information contained in the rating anchors. Therefore, the biasing impact should be reduced. However, while it appears that standardized rating materials may reduce assimilation and contrast effects. It is difficult to estimate to what extent biases are decreased. The present article aims to provide this information. Next slide, please. The problem of research. In the present study, The authors analyzed the impact of bars on assimilation and contrast effects in selection interview strategy. The respective effects were induced by manipulation of the interview sequence of standardized and videotape interview performances. In experiment 1, an assimilation effect was induced, and in experiment 2, we induced a contrast effect. The authors hypothesized that encouraging significantly reduced the shift in means caused by assimilation and contrast effect respectively. Next. The methodology that used in this journal is qualitative method by giving the question to participants, data and collecting data. All participants were undergraduate students of the Department of Psychology and native German speakers. The two experiments were conducted independently, and participation in one experiment precluded the participation in the other experiment. In both experiments, participants were randomly assigned to the experimental condition. Analyzing the data, hypotheses were tested with ANOVA tables. The two experimental factors, as well as the rater's gender, were included as independent variables. In addition to aesthetics, we also calculated effects size P2. To facilitate the interpretation of the effects, the authors generated line diagrams containing rating means and unvariate 95% CI for the experimental condition. Next slide. Research finding and discussion in this journal. In the present study, bars were evaluated with regard to their potential to reduce assimilation and contrast effects in performance ratings. The two rating biases were successfully induced by the experimental condition using video type interview sequences. Overall, bars show consistently positive effects on the reduction of the rating biases. Specifically, bars reduce assimilation effects by almost 40%. Contrast effects were reduced by approximately 11%, which, however, did not reach statistical significance. Interestingly, the relative reduction of contrast effect is somewhat smaller than in the study of Wexley 1973, which was about 22.5%. One reason for this comparably smaller effect may be that present-day psychology students are more aware of the potential contrast effects than students more than 40 years ago. Next slide. And the conclusion of this first journal is the overall beneficial effects of bars could be verified, and a partial increase in objectivity has been achieved. However, making a general recommendation for using bars might be too much considering the present findings. For one, the residual proportion of biases was still large. Seven, uh, sep- Specifically, 60% of the assimilation effect variance and 89% of the contrast effect variance could not be controlled for. Furthermore, because the present study was conducted in an experimental setting, it is not obvious how our effects will translate to actual selection interview settings. A rather training might be the preferable option, although it is not clear to what extent a training would reduce assimilation effects. Nevertheless, there are good reasons to consider bars. That's all the explanation from the first journal, and we are going to continue to the second journal that will be explained by Olga. Olga, time is yours.
Okay, thank you. So this is the second journal, by title, an experimental study on occurring effect on consumer price judgment based on consumer experience in scenes. With the years 2022, with the authors University, Jizong and Zhao and the Doi with number. So this is the background of research slash why the author interested in the topic. Due to the initiative feelings, participation, interaction, and demand creation characteristic of customer experience, customer pay more and more attention to the process and experience of value generation and not just the product itself. Experience marketing comes into being compared with traditional marketing methods. Experience marketing puts more emphasis on customer demands, which can improve the brand value and customer loyalty by improving the experience of customers during consumption, according to Yan 2015. Experience marketing encourages consumers to use and feel the products and pay attention to the interactive communication with consumers, according to the one et al. 2021. So, customers often get a consumer experience and they share the experience with others, creating product experience value. In the sharing economy, social value is a new driver of consumer contentment and continuance intention, according to the Mailhan 2019. Experience value is not created by customer alone and must be built in the process of good interaction with others, covering a range of internal and external experience value, such as functional experience, emotion value, social experience, and content experience, according to Jen and Zhu 2019 and Lee 2019. So the background So the background of research or why the author interested in the topic, this article innovatively puts forward that the key to experience marketing is how to create more experience value for customers by creating the perfect experience of consumers. In addition to encouraging consumers to take the initiative to pay a high premium for their products and service, compared with the solidification of traditional marketing scenes, the experience as scenes emphasize more on creating value for consumers through feeling. It is usually difficult to accurately measure the price, quality, etc. Hence, experience relies on consumer to make price judgment on products and service through sensory impression. However, in the process of product experience, business tend to play a dominant position. So, as a master of a lot of product information and its sets experience environment, experience initiative perception, experience of interaction, and the social factors will largely influence the consumer condition of products, according to the Young 2017. This will likely lead consumers to make irrational judgment on decision-making problems, leading to decision-making deviation. So the problem of the research, this study believed that compared with the traditional marketing scenes, the feeling of the experience scenes is often solidified as the impressive first information due to the restrictive sort of the field experience time, the specific environment, and the induction of the service. So it is likely to produce a certain degree of anchoring effect. This study tries to explore whether the consumer price judgment decision in the experience scenario is affected by the anchor effect and the influence of the consumer price judgment. The innovation point of this research is to study the existence and influence factor on consumer anchor effect in the process of price judgment by setting and experiments to help enterprise marketing planners to make reasonable anchor strategy, to improve the perception of consumer experience value, and to stimulate their willingness to buy. The methodology, research method selection, according to the requirements of the customer experience since the research method combining the scenario simulation experience method, role-playing method, interview, and questionnaire survey method is selected. The situational simulation experimental method is also known as the field test method. By arranging the subject in a simulated and realistic working environment, they can conduct a series of tests on their respective tasks and finally evaluate the test result. So they are then asked to process and answer the various price judgment problems that may appear in this process. Meanwhile, the role-playing experiment in social psychology is done to complete the experimental design. The main test should explain the experience situation to the subject before the real scenario simulation. It will ask the subject to imagine the role of the ordinary consumer. Finally, the basic information survey and the preliminary experiment rational evaluation were conducted through the site interview and questionnaire survey to ensure the smooth progress of the formal test. The second, experience scene selection. In order to truly reflect the experience marketing environment, subject perception, file transfer, and other key characteristics, this article selected high-touch product as experimental products. This is because the function of the high-touch product is relatively complex and must be used to able to feel the value of the products or service, thereby making the customer experience very prominent and important. Huawei Peer Glass, Smart Body Fat to Scale Pro, and FreeBuds Wireless Bluetooth headset were selected as the experience products. The reason for the choice of products were as follows. First, the three products were emerging technological products, which will bring feeling of freshness to the subject. Second, consumer without purchasing experience had little knowledge and experience about these products, while customer with purchasing experience could better understand the configuration of these products. So it was less difficult and fuzzy for the subject to evaluate their own knowledge about these products. Third, the three products have no obvious gender audience, so the measurement of gender variables was more objective after multiple negotiation. The data on collecting data, the scene simulation experience location is located in Huawei Authorized Experience Store in Chengdu. All participants acted as ordinary consumers, so they were able to answer the corresponding price question according to their experience and their own past experience after experiences the above products. Through the design of experiment group, high anchor group and low anchor group, 30 subjects selected to the pre-experiment and 240 subjects selected to the formal experiment were all ordinary consumer of an authorized Huawei experience store in the city. These subjects were 18 years old and could make an independent judgment of prices. The basic information of the subject, like sex, age, education, and occupation met the normal distribution. So here's the analyzing data. This is the analyzing the data. The variable control of the anchor value. Anchor value of the high anchor was about twice the actual price of the product, and anchor value of the low anchor group was about half actual the price of product. Anchor value of the internal anchor was the median of its effective estimated value, and the control of temperature is each group, subject with temperature and subject without temperature were evenly distributed. Subject with a temperature were not strictly restricted by the time when answering question, and subject with temperature had to complete the product experience and make judgment on question within the specific time. So here is the research finding and discussion. Show that the estimated value of the price judgment by the subject under the high anchor condition was obviously higher than that under the low anchor condition. Thus, when the consumer make a price judgment, they will adjust upward and downward with a reference value or anchor value given by the outside world as a benchmark. A high anchor costs a high price judgment estimate, and a low anchor costs a low price estimate. So the conclusion is particularly when consumers make decisions on their familiar products, emotion and cognitive need had a significant impact on the anchoring effect, while temperature had a insignificant impact on the anchoring effect. So this is my second journal. Back to our moderator, Putri.
Okay, thank you, Olga, for explaining the second journal. So that's all of our presentation about anchoring technique in NLP. Thank you for your attention, everyone. See you in next chance.